Tonight, the major shakeup at the White House. Sources tell ABC News President Trump's embattled national security advisor Mike Waltz will leave the post, but he's staying in the administration. What major new role he's now taking on. This all comes following that Signal chat controversy. And now we're getting a photo of Waltz using Signal in a cabinet meeting just yesterday. The scary scene unfolding outside a church preschool in South Carolina. Police say a driver intentionally rammed his car into a group of people, including children. Elontown, USA. He spent months trying to rein in the government, but tonight Elon Musk's SpaceX could become the government in a small Texas community. We're on the ground in a tiny Texas town as voters get ready to rename this community Starbase. But not everyone is happy.
Go to Mars, do your thing, get your rockets and go. But let us do our thing too.
The horrifying moment during a Major League Baseball game, a fan falls from the stand onto the outfield below. Stunned players see it happen. Check your ID. Why, as soon as next week, you may not be able to get on an airplane unless you go to the DMV right now. Diane Sawyer's powerful interview with Emmy winner Kelsey Grammer, haunted by the murder of his sister. For the first time in 50 years, he reveals new details about her death, his grief, and his hope to help others heal their pain.
I spent a long time on her death and very little on her life. And that's what I hope people will take. Spend time on the life you lost. Spend time on the life you shared, rather than the day you lost it.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Just 24 hours after clearing the 100th day of his presidency, a major shakeup in the Trump administration. Today, the president announced embattled National Security Advisor Mike Waltz is out, now nominated to be the next U.S. ambassador of the United Nations. The move comes more than a month after Waltz inadvertently added a journalist, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, to a secret chat on the Signal app with key members of the Trump administration, where details about a missile strike in Yemen were shared. Just last week, President Trump said maybe his staff shouldn't use Signal. But just yesterday, Waltz was photographed during a cabinet meeting using the app, where you can see names including Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who will now serve as interim national security advisor. But should there be concern over Rubio juggling both major roles? A former Biden State Department official will weigh in for analysis in just a moment. But first, ABC's senior political correspondent Rachel Scott leads things off from the White House.
Mr. President, why now on Mike Waltz?
Tonight, President Trump announcing the first shakeup of his second term. His embattled national security advisor, Mike Waltz, is out.
Have a good day.
Cameras catching Waltz as he walked to the West Wing early this morning, where the president delivered the news. Trump waiting until the 100th day of his presidency had passed to remove Waltz. But his departure comes as no surprise. The former Florida congressman embarrassed the White House and created a national security incident by starting a group chat among top administration officials on the commercial messaging app Signal to discuss sensitive details of military strikes in Yemen, and included a reporter by mistake. At the time, President Trump said Waltz had learned his lesson.
And probably he won't be using it again, at least not in the very near future. What do you think?
That's sir, I agree with you. Let's get everybody in the room.
But yesterday at the president's cabinet meeting, cameras capturing Waltz checking Signal on his phone. Chats visible with Vice President J.D. Vance, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, too. At that meeting, Waltz lavishing praise on the president, who would boot him from his job just 24 hours later.
It's an honor to serve you in this administration, and I think the world is far better, far safer for it.
Today, the president announcing he would be moving Waltz to another role, posting on social media, "I will be nominating Mike Waltz to be the next United States ambassador to the United Nations." President Trump also saying Rubio would now become his national security advisor on an interim basis. That news came as a surprise to Rubio's spokesperson at the State Department when she was informed by reporters.
It is clear that I just heard this from you. This is the magic.
No heads up that this was coming.
the miracle of modern technology and the social media. So that is an exciting moment here. I think that, as I know Secretary Rubio, this is a man who, as I think you all know, has worn several hats from day one.
Rubio will now become the first person to serve simultaneously as Secretary of State and National Security Advisor since Henry Kissinger filled both roles for President Nixon.
And that was about 5 decades ago. Rachel Scott joins us now. Rachel, is there any indication just how long Rubio will have to balance these two roles, or how he'll even do that?
Well, the president says it's in the interim, but for now that timeline is still very unclear how quickly the president wants to move on filling that role. What we do know, there are some questions about how Marco Rubio is going to balance this all. As Secretary of State, he does spend a lot of time traveling around the world meeting with foreign leaders, but the role of a national security advisor is to spend a lot of time here in Washington, D.C., briefing the president on the most urgent threats and national security concerns of our nation, Lindsay.
2 tough jobs. All right, Rachel Scott from the White House for us. Thanks so much, Rachel. Let's bring in Wendy Sherman, former Deputy Secretary of State under the Biden administration. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time. Are you at all surprised by the president's decision to nominate Michael Waltz to be U.S. ambassador to the UN, as opposed to simply firing him over the fallout surrounding the Signal chat?
It's probably a safety measure in the sense that since he's going to be nominated, he won't go telling tales out of school if he wants to get confirmed and try to stay on the good side of the president. I think it's not a shock to us that he asked Waltz to step aside as national security advisor. Reports were that he had a difference of opinion on many policy issues. There are reports being put out, I suspect, by the White House that he wasn't very collaborative with other cabinet members and wasn't respectful of Susie Wiles, the chief of staff. That said, he's got a lot of support on Capitol Hill. He's a former Green Beret and former member of the House, well known and well liked. So my guess is he will get confirmed.
During a briefing today, reporters appeared to inform the State Department spokesperson of Rubio's new role, which she replied the move was not entirely surprising. Given your experience at the State Department, do you think officials knew this move was coming?
Don't think so. That was actually quite a shocking moment. It's not to say that sometimes those things happen, but clearly the administration had kept this in a very small circle. It was really telling. There's a sense sometimes of incompetence and non-coordination in this White House. The fact that Tammy Bruce didn't know what was happening was pretty stunning.
Rubio will now be holding 2 critical positions at the same time, U.S. State Secretary and interim National Security Advisor. Should there be any concerns there as he juggles both roles at the same time?
Of course, there will be concerns. The only other person who's done it in recent memory was Henry Kissinger from 1973 to 1975. And then he resigned from his double duty, and Brent Scowcroft became National Security Advisor because people were so concerned about his trying to do 2 jobs.
Any guesses on who you think might be tapped as the replacement, or anyone you think should be top of mind?
I don't know the Republican core that well. There have been rumors that it would be Steve Witkoff, but he's not interested. Already, I find it extraordinary and not very wise to have Mr. Witkoff, who is not experienced as a diplomat, though an accomplished businessman. It's sort of odd for him to be leading 3 major negotiations all at the same time, often on his own, without support staff or knowledge of the people and the information that he needs to really get the job done.
This is a bit of a crystal ball question, but do you anticipate more cabinet shakeups surrounding the leak? I present Hegseth, for example.
Yes, I think, quite frankly, Lindsay, that many people were surprised that it was Mike Waltz who was moved out as opposed to Secretary Hegseth, because Secretary Hegseth clearly uses Signal to put our pilots in jeopardy by sharing information that should never be shared on Signal.
Lastly, with the knowledge you have as a former member of the previous cabinet, as a citizen now, is there anything in particular that might keep you up at night?
There are lots of things that keep me up at night. Certainly, our competition with China is a pacing challenge, and there's a potential for conflict in Asia. I'm very concerned that North Korea might do something out of the blue, and no one has control over what North Korea does. I'm very skeptical about Putin ever agreeing to any kind of a peace deal with Ukraine, and we still have many hostages. There is a lot going on in the world that many people are trying to juggle simultaneously. And of course, the Iran negotiation, which I have a special interest in, having worked so hard on the last one. So I wish him all the best. I hope it works. But quite frankly, the level of competence, the level of detail, the kind of teams you need to resolve these very difficult problems, I don't see that happening. You cannot rule the world or our country by tweets alone.
Former Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. A Trump-appointed federal judge in Texas has permanently blocked President Trump from using the Alien Enemies Act in his immigration crackdown. Other judges have previously done so, but only on a temporary emergency basis. The 36-page ruling says the administration exceeded the scope of the centuries-old wartime law in deporting Venezuelan gang members who the administration claimed had invaded the U.S. The case comes after the Supreme Court ruled anyone challenging their removal under the Alien Enemies Act must be allowed due process. Now to some breaking news. An arrest has been made after an hours-long manhunt in South Carolina. Police say the suspect is accused of intentionally driving into a group of people outside a church preschool, which injured 2 children and also an adult. The horrifying scene unfolded this afternoon in a small beach town just outside of Charleston. Here's ABC's Faith Abube with that story.
Tonight, the horrific scene in South Carolina after authorities say a driver slammed a vehicle into multiple people, including children, before fleeing the scene armed with a knife. Police investigating this as a possible intentional act, launching a massive search, identifying the suspect as Justin Colin Adams.
We're being advised possibly 2 subjects that were run over. We have PD on scene trying to gather further.
The horror unfolding outside a church preschool on Sullivan's Island around 1 p.m. 2 children and 1 adult injured. First responders treating victims on the scene.
There was no altercation. It was some children outside of what we is known as a preschool, and the vehicle struck the children and the adult.
Police launching drones, setting up checkpoints, checking every car in and out of the island. And late today, police taking the suspect into custody, saying they found him on a boat after an hours-long search.
Our thanks to Faith Abube. Now to an update on the driver of a car who sped across a field and through an after-school facility, killing 3 young children and a teenager in central Illinois earlier this week. In an ongoing investigation, officials said today that the driver was not under the influence of drugs or alcohol and that the 44-year-old female may have had a medical emergency. The driver was not injured and is not in custody. Now to that dangerous storm system stretching from Texas into the Northeast. 30 million Americans are in the path of these slow-moving storms with flooding rains and straight-line winds near Houston. 2 more people were killed in Oklahoma when floodwaters swept their vehicles away. Blanchard, Oklahoma was cut in 2 when this road was washed away and a utility pole exploded near Pittsburgh. Nearly 250,000 people in Pennsylvania are now without power. Lee Goldberg will have the forecast in a moment, but first, here's Maria Villarreal in Oklahoma.
Powerful storms on the move tonight.
Oh my God!
For the 4th night in a row, millions under threat from severe storms and record-breaking deadly flooding. Late today, a tornado reported on the ground north of Austin near Killeen, Texas. Overnight north of Houston, 70-mile-an-hour straight-line winds slamming Leona, Texas. North of Dallas, Freddie Chang's house in Carrollton scorched.
I heard a loud boom.
After a lightning strike set it on fire. South of Oklahoma City in Blanchard, catastrophic damage.
It's been raining here for days. The ground is soaked, and it actually gave way right here on this county road. You can see a 30-foot drop down, and actually families are on the other side, 10 of them stranded.
One of them, John Tees, speaking with our affiliate KOCO by cell phone.
They asked me to go ahead and park my truck across the road, which I parked my son's truck. You can see it down there. That way no one accidentally came through and got, in trouble.
Authorities in Oklahoma say 2 people were killed in the state overnight when their vehicles were swept away by floodwaters.
Our thanks to Maria, and let's get a look at the forecast now with our chief meteorologist Lee Goldberg from our New York station WABC. Lee, time this out for us.
All right, Lindsay, this evening it's all about Texas again. One day after another, we've got supercell thunderstorms from Rock Springs in between Waco and Austin. Tornado warning thankfully expired, but there was a confirmed large tornado near Briggs, Texas, and these storms remain strong into the evening hours. A flood watch into Oklahoma City. Another problem spot, storms coming out of Ohio. Remember, we had the derecho in this area a couple days ago, and now we have strong to severe storms across parts of Pennsylvania into the evening hours with 60-mile-per-hour winds. Tomorrow, the severe threat, it's basically from Texas all the way to the Tennessee Valley, so figure Austin, Greenville, Huntsville, Nashville all in line for some of these storms. This whole system expands into the northeast. It edges east over the weekend, so it'll be waves of showers. Want to stress it won't be a washout, but it does start an unsettled stretch that will last deep into next week. Lindsay?
All right, Lee Goldberg for us. Thanks so much, Lee. Next tonight, a Pittsburgh Pirates fan remains in critical condition tonight after falling more than 20 feet from the stands during last night's game. A fan captured the moment the man tumbled head over heels, then laid motionless on the ground. Here's ABC's Will Reeve.
Tonight, this video capturing the terrifying moment a man fell from his seat at Pittsburgh's PNC Park, landing on the field, now in critical condition.
We've had one person fall out of the stands, 20-plus feet. We've got 3 medics working to assess and extract the patient now.
The 20-plus foot fall coming in the 7th inning of the Pirates game against the Chicago Cubs.
When you look at it like in slow-mo, he just looked like he was like jolting up because it was a huge play.
Bobby Ketter unintentionally caught the moment on video.
It happened so fast, and then we looked over at the Pirates, and they all had their hats off, and that's when I knew it was pretty serious.
Players frantically trying to alert umpires and security. The game paused, players taking a knee as medical personnel attended to the man, taking the fan away on a gurney and rushing him to the hospital.
Obviously a very scary moment, and just kind of see like everybody's taking a knee and just praying and hoping everything's okay.
Today, Pirates chairman Bob Nutting stating, "Pirates baseball is a community, and our fans are like family. In times like these, we must come together, support one another, and keep him and his loved ones in our prayers."
Our thanks to Will Reeve. And tonight, music mogul Sean Diddy Combs rejected a plea deal just 4 days before his federal sex trafficking trial is set to begin. Combs could spend the rest of his life in prison if he's found guilty on all charges. Here's ABC's chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katursky.
Tonight, Sean Combs makes it official. He's rejecting the government's offer to plead guilty and spare himself the possibility of a prolonged term in prison. When asked if he turned down the offer, Combs answered, "Yes, I do, Your Honor," as he stood in a baggy beige jail uniform. Terms were not disclosed, but prosecutors did say a plea could result in a shorter sentence for Combs than if he's convicted. The decision guarantees Combs will face trial beginning just 4 days from now that will test whether one of music's most prolific figures used his power, wealth, and fame to sexually exploit both women and men for decades. Combs has pleaded not guilty to racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution charges that accused him of coercing alleged victims into prolonged, drug-fueled sexual activity that he called freak-offs and threatening them into silence. At trial, Combs will ditch the jail garb and wear ordinary clothes, as his lawyers argue the evidence shows consenting adults being intimate in their own way.
Aaron Katursky for us. General Motors is the latest corporation to adjust its outlook to reflect the impact of tariffs. GM predicts its earnings will be down between $4 and $5 billion this year. The company says they plan to absorb some of those costs and keep the price of new vehicles steady for now. And Hershey is reporting that its first quarter sales dropped 13% compared to quarter one last year. The chocolate maker expects tariffs will also cost them an additional $15 to $20 million in the next quarter. And Microsoft has raised prices in the U.S. and Canada of its Xbox consoles, controllers, and other accessories between 20 and 28%, citing market conditions and the rise in cost of development. Microsoft, however, noted that prices for some of its controllers, such as the adaptive controller and adaptive joystick for disabled players, will not change. Also in the economy, McDonald's store traffic in the U.S. fell 3.6% in the first quarter as economic uncertainty weighed on diners. The decline is the biggest McDonald's has seen since 2020, when the pandemic shuttered restaurants and other public spaces nationwide. McDonald's has responded to the sales drop by expanding its value menu, which allows customers to buy one item for $1 when they purchase a full-priced item. It's also offering its $5 meal deal throughout the summer. And still ahead, we are just days away from the Real ID deadline, but long lines at DMVs and confusion are plaguing the much-delayed rollout. What you need to know if you're planning on flying anytime soon. And welcome to Starbase City. Elon Musk's company SpaceX is working to expand a rocket testing and launch site in Texas into a full-blown municipality. But Elon's latest colony is not your typical town, and locals aren't too sure about it.
Families are now worried that if it continues to grow, with the beach about 200 yards away, there will be a time where this area right here will become unavailable to them.
Welcome back, everyone. The world's richest man, Elon Musk, has spent months trying to rein in the federal government. But tonight he's trying to add running a city to his empire. Residents in a small community are voting to give Elon Musk's SpaceX control over the administration of the town and rename it Starbase. In tonight's Prime Focus, our Maria Villarreal travels to deep South Texas, just miles from the Mexico border, where not everyone is so happy.
SpaceX is shooting for Mars. Elon Musk's high-tech rocket company, SpaceX, now racing to bring humanity closer to being a multi-planetary species.
And we're going to take Doge to Mars.
Back here on Earth, the leader of President Trump's efforts to slash government spending is now hoping his company gets a chance to start a government of their own. This is Starbase. It's where SpaceX researches, launches, and tests rockets, and pretty soon it could be the newest town in America. But this isn't your typical town. It's a company town filled with mostly SpaceX employees. It's less than 2 square miles, and it butts right up to a state nature preserve and Boca Chica Beach along the Gulf Shore.
Our families have been going to Boca Chica Beach for generations. Boca Chica Beach is very precious to this area. People rely on the beach for fishing, swimming.
Last year, a petition was submitted to the state of Texas by SpaceX to create a new town. The new municipality would function as its own city, able to create its own fire department and emergency services, even a school district. A few hundred current residents are now voting to make it official, including Musk himself, who was registered to vote at an address within the proposed town and voted here last November. What was once a small, sleepy beach community on the outskirts of Brownsville, Texas, could be officially known as Starbase.
We follow him during his football season. We go.
Renee Medrano's home, with goats and pigs nearby, sits 20 miles from the coast. Boca Chica Beach is in his blood, a place where he came as a kid and then brought his own family once he got older.
You didn't have to pay anything to go to the beach other than just get in your car, get in your truck, round up the neighbors, round up the cousins, round up the aunts and uncles, and let's go have fun. And to see now the way it is, it's just disheartening is what it is. It really is.
SpaceX had its first Starship launch in April 2023, successfully coming off and clearing the launch pad, then losing control of its super heavy booster engines. But the company was laying the groundwork for something much bigger more than a decade ago.
There was a gentleman that came to speak at my wife's school in 2014 that said that there was this idea that there was going to bring a SpaceX to Brownsville, Texas, and supposedly it was going to bring in this monies and all this stuff, but it was going to be a small test site. As long as we can still go to the beach, I guess, you know, they want to run a few tests and then they want to leave, you know. Who would ever think they wanted to go to Mars 10 years later?
We have liftoff.
Since 2014, SpaceX has had 8 launches from Boca Chica with staggered success. And now the company is asking the FAA to grant permits that would allow SpaceX to launch up to 25 times a year.
It's a great novelty, and it's a great thing, I would assume, because you have a lot of visitors that go to the island to see the rocket launches, but then those people leave, and we stay. We see the spaceship blow-ups. We see the environment being torn up around that area. We see Boca Chica Beach. We don't know that place anymore.
So it's undeniable that SpaceX has brought jobs and revenue to a remote part of South Texas that doesn't get a whole lot of attention. But you can see that this place is growing by leaps and bounds. Families are now worried that if it continues to grow, with the beach about 200 yards away, there will be a time where this area right here will become unavailable to them.
Becca Hinojosa leads a local environmental group pushing back against SpaceX.
SpaceX has been disrupting our everyday life down here. People have been turned away from going to the beach, which they've been going there for generations. Rent is going up, and it's all associated with, you know, SpaceX coming into this area and colonizing the region.
Unable to talk with SpaceX leaders, this small group protested during early voting by driving near a polling site with messages painted on their cars.
SpaceX people, it's clear that they're trying to start their own gated community. They're trying to shut local community members out, and that's why, you know, we're gonna drive with these messages on our cars today.
If this area becomes its own municipality, in addition to standing up a slew of services for residents, SpaceX wants control of the nearby beach and roads that lead to the spaceport. Bills proposed in the Texas legislature would give Starbase the power to close beaches and roadways on weekdays.
This bill is not taking the Boca Chica Beach away from the public. All it's doing is, if the people decide on May 3rd that they want to make their own municipality, then they will decide who will be their governing board and they will make the decisions on the closures based on what FAA is requiring.
SpaceX has not responded to a request for comment from ABC News. As SpaceX works on an out-of-this-world mission, there's real concern at the cost of their ambitious goal for those who call this area home.
Elon Musk, a billionaire, you know, should not be allowed to create his own company town and colonize the beach. Beaches are supposed to be public.
You don't know the rules anymore. That is a state park. There always should be access to state park, to Open Beaches Act and everything. At least give us the beach. At least have access to the beach. I mean, what's so hard about that? I mean, do your thing. You know, go to Mars, do your thing. Get your rockets and go. But let us do our thing too.
We'll keep on top of the outcome there. Our thanks to Maria Villarreal. Coming up, the missing cat reunited with its owner after 3 years, and the Tony nominations are in. We take a look by the numbers. Welcome back, everyone. Nominations for the 78th Annual Tony Awards, celebrating excellence in Broadway theater productions and performances, were announced today. Let's take a look at the contenders by the numbers. There were more than 40 shows eligible for this year's Antoinette Perry Tony Awards, as it's formally known, with a total of 10 nominations for each. Buena Vista Social Club, Death Becomes Her, and Maybe Happy Ending garnered the most nominations. It's the first Tony nomination for George Clooney, who's nominated for his role in Good Night and Good Luck. And it's also the first nomination for Mia Farrow for her role in The Roommate. Othello received 0 nominations, despite the play starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Denzel Washington. At more than $374, Othello frequently is the most expensive ticket in the industry. Audra McDonald received her 11th Tony Award nomination today for her role as Rose in Gypsy. That makes her the most Tony-nominated performer in history. And a couple Tony Award fun facts. There are 26 competitive categories, including for costume design and choreography. And the winners will be decided by 840 designated voters within the theater community. The Tony Awards ceremony will air June 8th from Radio City Music Hall here in New York City, hosted by none other than Wicked star Cynthia Erivo. And still ahead, a 2-year-old in Florida fell in a pool at after 1 minute and 8 seconds in the water. She was lifeless. What first responders were able to do next is being called a miracle. And we hit the court with 3 elite college basketball players ahead of the premiere of the second season of Full Court Press. That action-packed preview is coming up. 2024 was the hottest year on record for our planet, and climate scientists around the globe are united that more action must be taken to stave off dire effects from climate change. Congress mandates a report roughly every 5 years that's supposed to track the planet's progress, called the National Climate Assessment. This week, the Trump administration dismissed all the authors working on the report that was set to be released in 2028. Joining us now is one of those authors, Tulane professor Jesse Keenan. Thank you so much for your time, Professor. What's the practical importance of this report?
Well, the assessment, the National Climate Assessment, is a review of the best available science that we have about the impacts of climate change and what we can do to both mitigate and adapt. That is how we can prevent greenhouse gases, and ultimately what we do to prepare and respond to climate impacts. And the assessment itself is widely utilized in the public and the private sector for both functions. And this relates to how turning on the lights, safe drinking water, everything that we think about in terms of our daily lives that may be impacted by climate change is supported by this science and this assessment of the science.
What happens now that you've been dismissed from your role along with hundreds of your colleagues?
Well, that's up to the administration in terms of how they proceed, and I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is an active body of work that goes on in academia and as well as in the private sector, as well as state and local governments. So the work continues because the risks are real, and so you can avoid something and you can deny it, but at the end of the day, these are real impacts that shape people's lives, and both the public and the private sector are actively engaged in a wide variety of fronts to understand what climate impacts and climate science and how it's impacting our daily lives.
We see in our reporting day to day around the world, whether it's dust storms or massive flooding or the melting of glaciers, is there a direct correlation with climate change?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've seen in prior assessments is that the formal attribution of climate change to extreme events is growing. The scientific literature is increasingly clear that many, if not most, extreme events and disasters have some attribution to climate. It isn't necessarily that climate is driving those, but is playing some increasing the likelihood, rather, of these extreme events from happening. So we do know with greater and greater precision the attribution associated between climate change and all of these extreme events.
There are those who also say that the Earth goes through different cycles of change over decades, over centuries. Can you give us a best case scenario and a worst case scenario with regard to the impact of climate change on our world?
It's hard to understand where we are going, and there's a great deal of uncertainty, of course, but that shouldn't prevent us from engaging the science to understand with a better idea of where we're going. And the best way to think about this is without a national climate assessment, we're driving in a car in a rainstorm without windshield wipers. And our goal is to provide the best available science so that we can make better decisions in the future.
Before we let you go, do you think that the Trump administration is making an irreversible mistake?
Well, we've seen with prior administrations, and it's not my role to speak to the public policy or political implications of this, but what I can say is that prior administrations, including the Bush administration, had reluctance in issuing and moving forward the National Climate Assessment, but were ultimately prevailed. And they did so because it is an obligation under the law. So as long as this country is advanced and governed pursuant to the law, then we should adhere to Congress's original intent, a bipartisan passed bill in 1990, the Global Change Act, to produce the National Climate Assessment in the advance of the stewardship of our country.
Jesse Keenan, we thank you so much for your insight and appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
We are just days away from the second season of Full Court Press premiering, and this time the series follows basketball stars Kiki Irifen, forward from USC, Flau'jae Johnson, guard from LSU, and Hannah Hidalgo, guard from Notre Dame. Our Juju Chang sat down with them for an action-packed look at the 2024-2025 college basketball season through their eyes. Let's take a look.
This is the peak of women's basketball right here. I'm Superwoman. I can do it.
I've always hated losing more than I love winning.
Stop living in your own worlds and figure it out together.
We have to match their intensity.
We got exposed.
This is not a moment. We are in a movement.
Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me. Let's start with you, Hannah. The intensity from the jump, as they say, throughout the entire series. There's one quote that says, we all know Hannah's not the tallest, but Hannah doesn't know that. You at 5'7" exude so much confidence on the court. How do you do that?
You know, I was always the smallest player on the floor, so I just had to bring something different. And I figured out that my energy, my intensity really fed into not only myself, but my teammates also, and it helped us all play better.
Kiki, you are all playing at a time when women's college basketball and women's basketball generally is having this huge surge in popularity. What does this moment mean to you, and how responsible do you feel for, sort of helping spread the popularity?
I think it's super special just thinking about my freshman year till now. When I came into college, women's basketball wasn't there yet. And then to see last season, this season, how much viewership, attention, and just opportunities that we're getting, I think it's one, just super exciting to be a female athlete at this time. And two, I think for us, it's just, carrying that torch, making sure the girls that come behind us have these same opportunities, but better.
Coach Moki really took a chance on me, and I knew she was invested in it. We just both powerful women.
Flau'jae, the opening scene is you watching for the 30th, 40th time replays. You talk a lot about mental toughness, right? What does that look like to you both on and off the court?
On the basketball court, not a lot go your way, and you got to be able to make something out of nothing. And so I think just being able to operate in chaos and have calmness in chaos, I think that's like mental toughness.
And there's a lot of talk about you rising into leadership on the team. What does that mean?
Man.
How do you be a leader on a team?
I just figured it out. Man, being a leader is just like putting a team before yourself. And so you have to be very selfless. And I think like with me trying to figure out my role for the team and trying to be that leader, not knowing what that entailed, and having to dial back, I think like at the end, it all kind of came together beautifully. Just me understanding that like it's bigger than me.
Kiki, congratulations. 4th pick, WNBA, you're heading to the Washington Mystics.
Well, there you go, Kiki Irifen.
Has that sunk in for you yet and your proud Nigerian family? Do they take it seriously now? You don't have to go be a product designer right away
Exactly.
Anywhere?
No, I've had my first day on the job already, which is crazy to say that my job is a professional basketball player, but my family's super proud. My grandparents were getting calls from people all over the country on draft night, and they're like, whoa, we didn't even know this was happening. So to just see how proud my family is of me and how much they support me, I feel like that's really what's going to push me further in this next journey of mine.
So, Flau'jae, you don't just want a bunch of trophies and rings, you also want a Grammy.
Yeah, facts.
Yes, facts. And your mom, who's here, is also your manager. Yeah. What does your career down the road look like for you?
Well, how far down the road?
Hey, it's up to you. You tell me the timeline.
I'm going to just tell you, like, my end-all, be-all. Like, of course, I want to have a great career in the WNBA, but I really want to tour. I want to tour, make music with, my peers, and I want to own a lot of businesses. I feel like in my end phase...
You want an empire.
I want an empire. You get it? And so, but really, like, my end phase is, like, owning my own record label and my own, like, sports group, to help navigate, like, help kids navigate through sports and music.
I'm, like, expected to have, like, a leadership role, but I'm also, like, I just got here. I want to understand how things work.
How do you, you graduated from Stanford, my alma mater, in 3 years, product design. What does your life beyond basketball, or maybe just in addition to basketball, look like?
I just see myself as a boss, like owning my own things, being a CEO, and honestly, whatever venture I get into, making sure that I'm able to help people as a result of that. I truly feel like I'm here to be of service to others.
And what's it like for you two guys? We see USC and Notre Dame square off.
Oh,
what
gosh.
was that like?
I don't want to talk about it.
You don't want to talk about it?
It was good for
Is there
me.
beef
It was
here?
good for her, not good for us.
No, there's no beef. It's all love. It was such a fun game. The atmosphere was crazy. Coach Ivy was telling us they're going to bring on the celebrities. We looked to the corner. Snoop Dogg is sitting there. Michael B. Jordan. They brought all the celebs.
Yeah.
And we go to church with you in this series. What are you trying to model for the next generation, not just of basketball fans, but of young women out there?
Yeah, I think even not just young women, but just young kids as a whole. And we have males looking up to, female athletes too now. It's such an inspiration to be a part of such a generation where women are finally getting the recognition. But, my Christian background is really big for me. I'm a child of God first and foremost, regardless of basketball or anything else. So I think it's great for the younger generation. I think I inspire them in that way.
I get the sense that you come out of your shell a bit during this series.
Yeah, I do.
What was that like?
I do. It's so fun. I think the series was just amazing because people got to know who I am outside of just being a basketball player, because they only see me on the court and they see this aggressive player, this who's yelling, who's screaming, and like off the court it's like, okay, she's completely different. She's very chill. She wants to laugh, dance, and do all these other things.
I was talking to you about the Liberty and the Valkyries and the Mystics, all of them. What does the WNBA look like to you moving forward?
Just a grind. Truly, I feel like, in college you have such a successful career, but going on to the next level, everybody had a successful career. I'm just excited to earn my keep, earn my spot, play against these legends that I've looked up to, and kind of just take different nuggets for them.
What message would you have for the young girls out there? I know so many who watch your games, who are drilling on the courts themselves. What advice would you give for?
I think first and foremost is to get in the gym, put the work in. You have to be able to make sacrifices. And I think another big thing is to tune out the social media, the haters, and all that other stuff, especially in a world where social media is so big. It's like you can get caught up into that. So making sure that you have a healthy balance, healthy resources, and that you're being able to tune that stuff out.
Thank you so much for coming and joining us.
Of course.
Yay.
Thanks for having us.
Good luck with the series.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Juju and the ladies for the conversation. The second season of Full Court Press premieres on May 3rd on ESPN. And finally tonight, our Diane Sawyer's incredibly powerful interview with Emmy Award winner Kelsey Grammer, of course known for his roles in Cheers and Frasier. Grammer has made us laugh for decades, and now he's opening up about his very personal battle after his sister's brutal murder and his mission to help others heal.
The eccentric, neurotic, hilarious
Copernicus called, and you are not the center of the universe.
Dr. Fraser Crane. But all this time we were laughing. We had no idea that the actor in real life was drowning in an undertow of sorrow. His colleagues on Cheers saw him battling cocaine and alcohol.
It's remarkable that I survived some of that.
It was tender and touching that they didn't know exactly how to reach you.
Yeah. Well, who could?
Who could heal the brutal loss of a sister you loved more than anything? He's written a book about her called Karen. One night, they'd been talking on the phone, making plans for a holiday visit, when 6 hours later, there was horror. 3 men on drugs had been raging through Colorado on a killing spree. And in an awful randomness, one of them was his sister.
I cried out loud like a child whose hope had died. I wrote that, yeah.
Our thanks to Diane. The full interview airs tomorrow on Good Morning America, and that is our show for this hour. I'm Lindsay Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.